Oxford from the inside. The good, the bad, but always the truth.
Hi, I'm Katie and welcome to episode 10 of Oxford from the Inside, the good and the bad, but always the truth. Today we're joined by Emily. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Emily. I just finished my degree studying history at Somerville College.
Great. Okay, welcome to the show. So today we're going to be talking about access at Oxford and the kind of different things you can be involved with, the different support you can access once you get here, because it's a journey to get here, but then also once you're here, that doesn't have to stop. So do you want to tell us a bit more about your background and then kind of what made you want to apply to Oxford?
Yeah, so a bit about me. I was the first in my family to go to university. I grew up on free school meals, went to a regular state comp school, so I didn't really see Oxford as in the cards, but kind of later on in my educational journey, so sixth form, I did really well at my AS and I kind of thought, I can apply to university. And then the Somerville Access Roadshow, so run by Somerville, they come into schools, non-selective state schools, and visit and kind of tell us about Oxford. They came to my school, and so I kind of thought, actually, like, Oxford students are normal. So then after getting my AS results, I thought I could maybe put in an application.
Okay, great. So what made you choose history? Was it just like you enjoyed it at A-level, or did you kind of like do some other kind of extracurricular stuff to get into it, or how did that kind of go?
Yeah, I was always like a humanities or essay person, so all of my A-levels were humanities. So I like them all, but history just stood out to me. And I also did a summer school of the Sutton Trust, based on history. And doing that, I kind of thought, actually, like, I really like learning more about it at like a university level. So I just thought, let's go forward with the application for history.
Okay, so when you were applying, how much kind of support did you receive with your application? Because I know there's kind of a big disparity often talked about between support between private schools and state schools, but also between state schools that have kind of different levels of funding and people to teacher ratio. So how was that for you, and how did you kind of find navigating that process if you didn't have support?
Yeah, I never realised like it was a thing to have so much support until like coming to Oxford, and people would be like, oh yeah, so much disparity between like the lessons you get given to be admitted and like paying personal tuition. And I was like, oh, okay, so I didn't have that. But like I did have one really supportive teacher who kind of helped me with my personal statement and stuff. But it was never a thing of like training me to get into Oxford. It was just like assisting me with my uni application. So it was kind of luck that I got in. Like the hat just went well, and like my personal statement like must have been okay. Yeah.
So what did you have on your personal statement? Because I know often with the Oxford personal statements, you'll kind of talk a bit about maybe what you've learned in school, or maybe talk about some books you've read or whatever. But then there's also a lot of teachers and websites and stuff encourage you to have what they call super curriculars, so kind of anything that you've done in your own time off your own back that relates to your subject. So what did you have on there that I guess other people watching this could be looking into?
Yeah, so the thing is, like, I had never done any of the stuff I'd done with like the intention of applying to Oxford or for like it to help my university. It was more like to see if university was for me. But then when I decided to apply to Oxford in like, it was very late, like September or like early October, sure, then I had stuff to put in. And like, for example, it was stuff like the summer schools, like access days where I'd have taken notes so I could actually go back and see what I found most interesting. Like I talked about a UCL summer course that I'd done where we looked at like music and history. So I talked about like protest song, and then I talked about like my own interest in my personal history. And then like, rather than like just like listing books, which some people do, that wasn't really my like style of learning. So I talked about like podcasts and lectures that I'd watched online instead. But yeah.
Okay, so that's a good idea, I guess, if people don't know where to start with books, because it can be quite like, which books do I read, which are more academic, and like how would you know that unless you can kind of find, I suppose, like a university reading list online. But yeah, I guess the YouTube videos, the podcasts are maybe more accessible for people as well, and maybe like explain it more.
Yeah, I think my advice is just like following your own interests, and then you can find stuff catered to that, and then like it makes so much more sense when you're explaining it as well.
Yeah, massively, because so one of our interviews for history was talking about our personal statement, and so I guess if you've got books on there that like maybe you did read them, but you didn't actually find them that interesting, then to talk about them with, I guess, like conviction and passion is quite difficult.
Yeah, but hard.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so once you got to Oxford, did you kind of, I know you said you'd done a summer school, which maybe like gave you a bit of insight into the sort of people that apply, but how did you kind of, did you find it different to what you expected or similar? Like what were the good and the bad, like the experience that you kind of had when you just started?
Yeah, because the summer school wasn't with Oxford, it was with like Nottingham University. So I literally wasn't sure like what I was getting myself into. Like obviously the access roadshow had come, so like I felt good about like the college, but I was nervous. And like it was a very mixed vibe. Like I was very glad that we had a freshers week, because I was told like Oxford doesn't get a freshers week. Like you literally won't be able to have fun. You won't like meet anyone normal. I was like, okay. Then I met you, for example. Good times. So like it did like exceed my expectations in terms of like the normality.
Yeah, like the fun you could have.
Yeah, and like you can live like a normal life, and like it doesn't just have to be work, and like you can meet nice people, and like there was things to do. And then I guess what I wasn't ready for is perhaps like more of like the traditional stuff. So like starting off with like a formal dinner, I was just like, I remember again with you, Katie, just sitting there like, what fork do we use?
Yeah.
But it's nice to have people who also think the same thing. So
yeah, and did you kind of find that? So I remember like the turning point for me was at interviews, because I was like, oh, everyone's really weird. Like I kind of had it in my head that interviews were going to be like very high pressure, very stressful. And then like I ended up making loads of friends, and I was like, okay, these people are like normal. Like I could see myself actually being friends with them. So like, did you kind of find that as well? Because I remember you had a couple friends in college from interviews and stuff.
yeah, like just like meeting people in interviews, and like, well, there were some people that were like a bit strange and competitive, and then some of them like you didn't see further on, so you're like, actually like that's not all they're looking for. Like some of the more normal like laid back people that were really nice, you see their faces again, so you're like, okay, actually like for me it's gonna be okay. But I was like unsure after getting the offer. Like I was like, yeah, but like I didn't know who out of the nice people, most people are nice, are gonna get in. So like you're like kind of anxious like before you get there about what to expect. But one person I met messaged me, so that was really nice. Like
so like you knew you had someone. Okay, so I guess one of the things that people talk about with probably not just Oxford, like Oxbridge University in general, is like this like imposter syndrome. So feeling like even though you got in, you were accepted, like you're at the uni, like you still feel like you don't belong there. So kind of in your experience, I guess throughout your degree, how real did you find that?
I found it so real, like literally from offer day or even before offer day, like just like constantly overthinking your place, like thinking like you do think like, did they make a mistake? And like when you find something particularly hard, you don't like rationalize and think, oh, like everyone's finding it hard. You kind of like find the flaws in yourself. So like especially in first year, I found the adjustment, like the academic adjustment, like difficult, and I was like they shouldn't have let me in, like, oh, like it's people from my school, like we're gonna find it more difficult, like maybe like we should just go somewhere else. But then like I think slowly, sometimes some people like hold on to it, but like slowly, like I think as you develop as a person and academically, like, and if you're supported by your college, you do like let go of it and think like actually like you slowly realize like, no, like I'm worthy of this place. Like you see you do a good essay and you're like, oh yes.
I knew there was a reason they let me in. And can I just say for anyone watching or listening, so Emily said like when she first got here, she didn't feel like she deserved to be here academically, and she just got a first. So you could do that.
Thank you.
So how have you been, I guess not just like you've been supported, but how have you kind of worked to like feel supported since you've been at Oxford? So kind of like access schemes, internship yourself, careers advice, like the societies and stuff.
So one of the main things like that really supported me was like the Moritz Hyman Scholarship, and it's now called the Crank Start Scholarship. But it's basically a scholarship for any low income students, and like it doesn't just give them financial support, which is really important in terms of allowing you to like live your university experience with less stress, because otherwise you'll be thinking like, do I need to work more, like actually work to get money in the holidays? Like you couldn't necessarily do the same things that other people are doing. So like financially it's really important in terms of like making you feel on a playing field with like your peers in terms of what you can do. But then like it also gives like social and career support. So like there's like internships ran just for us scholars, and they also fund unpaid internships if you apply, and then also socially they hold social, so you can just meet people like in a space where you might talk about like particular difficulties you're having that you don't want to speak to other people about. So like that was really key. And then I was also involved with First Generation Society. I was vice president, so that's the society for people who are the first in their family to go to university. Again, it just kind of, when there's different things on your mind, like certain societies just like allow you to talk more openly or just feel more at ease, perhaps like even like talk about things you didn't realize were bothering you. It's the same with like more cultural societies, race-based societies, religious-based societies. Like I think they're really important in terms of getting out of just the college space and like, yeah, being with people a bit more like typically like you. That's not to say you can't be friends with people who like have opposite backgrounds, but like just it allows you like a safe space.
Yeah. It's nice to like stay in touch with that part of yourself, and like you don't want to, as you said, like you might not feel comfortable talking about that kind of those kind of issues with everyone, so it's good to have that safe space. And so you've been involved in a lot of access initiatives yourself, so do you want to talk a bit about that and like kind of, I guess, why you got into that, how you found it, what you would maybe like advise other people, that stuff that there's out there that you can get involved with?
Yeah, I think it's it links to the whole idea of imposter syndrome. Like you enter Oxford and you feel like I've been lucky enough to like gain this space, but then like the second thing that touches your mind is like there's so many people like me that should be here, deserve to be here, but like can't be here or don't realize they could apply here, or like don't realize that they might enjoy their time here. Like it just like kind of sinks into your head straight away. So like as soon as I started, I was like enacted into like access mode, and I was like, okay, what can we do, because like there needs to be so much more going on. So some stuff, like students literally run so many access initiatives. Like there's some stuff already ongoing, like the Somerville Access Roadshow. So I ran for access officer my first term at uni and got it, and like that was one of the responsibilities to run the Access Roadshow. But then there's also like the opportunity, or like if there's not, I made the opportunity to like create new things. So for example, I thought that students who couldn't afford to visit should be able to. So like we didn't have any kind of reimbursement scheme, and other universities did. So I kind of talked to my college's development office about that, and we like launched like a fundraising campaign to create a reimbursement fund for like travel. And then I was also like a volunteer on a summer school for year 10s, which is Universify Education. So just working with like students in a bit more of the early years so that they know university is attainable before it might become too late.
Yeah, they kind of got it in their head and thinking about it.
Yeah, there's literally so many different things to do.
Yeah, and so one of the things you also did as the college access officer was you played quite a big role on the interviews. So when the students came, you were kind of the person like running, I guess, basically running the interviews on that face-to-face value. And so like, how did you find that, having been in that position like 2 years before? It's quite rewarding, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like it's so nice. Like one of the things I enjoyed most is actually just seeing and meeting students. And like I always told them, like it's not necessarily about like getting into Oxford. Like you don't need to, like if you don't get in, like it's not like the end of the world. And there's so many like high performing universities, but it's about like knowing and believing that you could go there, and then also just like being comfortable, especially in the admissions procedure. So like at interviews when it's so daunting, I think our college does it really well in terms of like making sure that the students are supported by students so that they actually feel at ease, they can ask questions, and it just reminds you like how far you've come. So at the like it was kind of one term in when I was running interviews and I was seeing like students come through and like interview, and I just thought like, oh my god, that was me before.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a reminder. And I think when you do a lot of access stuff, you kind of remind like yourself like what it meant to kind of go to university, what the whole procedure was like, because like it soon like flies by and you kind of like put it aside, but actually it was such like a big part of your life.
Yeah. So I guess with that, like trying to encourage people to apply, I think, yeah, having that confidence, even if some of it's like fake confidence, but having that ability to like feel comfortable throughout the process is so important, because otherwise you maybe won't be able to say everything that you want to say. It won't come across as well, and like everybody's super nervous at the interviews, Like I know someone that cried in hers and she still got in, but it's kind of, I guess you want to be able to feel like you can give it your best shot. And that's really important. And I think having that student face-to-face kind of interaction is important, because in certain schools, like, you are able to ask questions about the admissions, and there might be a teacher that kind of knows how it works really well, or has like recently graduated from Oxford. But then if you're coming from a different school, then you don't have any of that opportunity to ask those questions. And so having the time to talk to current students is like just really useful, I guess, even just to put your mind at ease, that they don't, like, the interviewers, the tutors, like, they don't care if you have like a certain accent. They don't care if you're the most eloquently spoken person. They just want to see that you want to learn, that you're interested, that you can say interesting things, that like you can think creatively. And it doesn't matter if you haven't done all of the like academic things that everybody else has done. I guess it's more about your potential. So pretty big question. How do you think, or I guess a couple of ways, there's probably quite a long list, but how do you think that access at Oxford can be improved? Like, how would you kind of want to see it moving forward in the future?
Yeah. Oh, the list is very long, but I'll give you a few of my top ones. I think first, like, acknowledging the different kind of problems and the different obstacles that people have to overcome as separate. So not just like grouping students together as like access or disadvantaged students, or like BAME students, but actually acknowledging and like trying to find solutions for different problems. So for example, acknowledging that Black students are so much more highly underrepresented than some other groups, and then seeing what you can do about that specifically. And also, for example, acknowledging that welfare for different groups of students will need to kind of change. And that's another thing, what you said earlier, like access doesn't end upon admission. So also supporting students like throughout their degree, on so many levels, including, like, for example, taking down roads maybe. So and then again, like, linking to that, making sure like the bureaucracy is not in the way. So often with access, like, it kind of gets stuck. So like someone will say yes to something, but like it can't actually happen because colleges are separate and it's not the whole university. Or like, oh yes, they say yes to like something happening like roads falling, but then it has to go through like the paperwork for like 3 years. So actively like tackling that and being like, that's not good enough, we're going to put it on the priority list and actually overcome the bureaucracy almost.
Definitely.
And then on that level, just like making sure that it's not just students running all of these things. Like, although the student voice and the student action is so important because like potential applicants can relate most to it, I think it's important that like you recognize that these students are also like doing a full-time degree, they might be working in their holidays, like they have so much stuff going on. So like colleges need to acknowledge that and think, how can we best support them, and how can we take the burden and the energy off of them when we can. So like, that's a few things.
I think it is very encouraging though to see that there's such a large proportion of the student body that like really do want to like drive forward various access initiatives and kind of like drill down into the very broad categories that the university uses. And so I think that is really encouraging, and it's perhaps encouraging for potential applicants to know that the people at uni do care, like the students do care, like they aren't gonna judge you necessarily, they do want to work alongside you, even if they don't come from that background themselves. Like, it is something that they still kind of want to help with. And I think that, I guess, says quite a lot about the student body that's maybe not the stereotype that you would maybe think of. Okay, so finally, what advice would you give to someone from a similar kind of background to yours who was thinking, oh, should I apply, shouldn't I apply? What would you kind of say to them, or I guess say to like a younger version of yourself?
I think one thing I always say to everyone is like, there's 5 UCAS spaces, and even for medicine there's 4. So like there is nothing to lose. Like, even if you're not sure you would want to accept the offer, like going forward and seeing if you get it and then deciding, like there's literally nothing to lose. So I definitely think just go for it if it's on your mind, rather than perhaps like not, and then thinking later on like, should I have? Secondly, like utilize resources, like especially if you're from a school or like background where you don't have access to perhaps like literal people to ask questions to. Like thankfully, like there's a growing bank of resources online, like once you get into it. So like on the student room, on literally YouTube, there's so many good like YouTubers from Oxford and Cambridge that can really help with specific things. Also like on the uni websites, yeah, there's a lot available in terms of personal statement support, like advice on what like an interview entails, like mock interviews that can just really put your mind at ease, as well as like practice admission tests, which some people don't know about. And then thirdly, like just like back yourself, support yourself, and like know that it's not the end of the world. So literally like even if you're not that confident, like know that like a university doesn't define you, and like you deserve to go for what you want and like be ambitious. And even if it doesn't work out, like everything will be good, hopefully.
Amazing. Okay, so I think that's all we have time for today. Thank you so much for like sharing your experiences with us. We've had some really interesting conversations, and thanks for joining us at Oxford from the Inside. And thank you to our followers for listening to this podcast or watching this video. Remember to follow us on Instagram at Oxford from the Inside, and check out our Facebook page for kind of regular updates on new content as well. Hope everyone stays safe and well, and until next time, bye.